Okie doke. So I guess are we? Well, you know, why don't we do our normal introduction and everyone can laugh. This is probably the same people almost every time, but
Yeah.
So I'm Joe Glines and I'm here in Dallas, Texas, and I don't have a background in programming, although over the last couple of years I've been definitely dialing it up more and more. And I got to loving AutoHotkey, and I met Jackie online. He was helping me with a lot of my issues over the years of mostly web scraping, but using COM. And I realized he had answered a bunch of my questions for me, and so I reached out to him and we started chatting, and we both shared a real strong passion for not just necessarily for AutoHotkey, but for automating things and simplifying things. And so we started talking quite a while. It seems like, I don't know, 2.5 years ago, something like that now. It's been a while.
Yeah, it really has been a while. It's amazing because the years kind of goes on, and right today I actually signed up through the online form for this. And by the way, I'm Jackie Stuck, and I'm placed just outside of Copenhagen in Denmark. But yeah, I've also been using AutoHotkey, and that was my first automation tool, I'd say, and I've been loving it ever since. Amazing what you can actually get done in a lot less time by using a tool like this. But yeah, Joe, you had a question, I think, about how long have you been using AutoHotkey? I was like, maybe 2 to 5 years, and then I was like, no, I actually started using it in 2012. And it was the 1st of February, so it's actually been more than 5 years now.
Yeah.
And I was just, whoa. Yeah. So yeah, it actually takes, time goes on quite quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we had talked about having webinars to just get together with other people and learn more stuff, and mostly AutoHotkey, and that's what this obviously is about. Today we're focusing on using arrays, both simple arrays and associative arrays. So let me, here's our contact info, by the way, and we were just talking about LinkedIn. You can also connect with us on LinkedIn, which is awesome. So far we had 37 people registered, and so everyone starts off muted except for Jackie and I. The only reason for that is because you can imagine what a melee it would be if 37 people, not that everyone signed up will be here, but try to talk at once. And so the first hour, what we do is Jackie and I will go through this little deck we have here. We'll do some programming. And then at the end of that first hour, we'll basically allow people to unmute themselves, and you can ask questions. And as we go, if you have questions, feel free to enter them into the chat, and typically Jackie and I are trying to monitor it as best we can, and we will either ask your question, or if it's too complicated of one, tell us you have a question that you want to ask, and I'll unmute you specifically, and then you can just ask your question. It has nothing to do with we think that we are that awesome that we want to mute everybody. All right, so, okay, so the first off,
Joe, I'm unsure if you actually have that in presenter mode or what. It seems to be cutting off a little bit.
The deck?
Yeah.
I can do this.
Yeah, that helped on my screen.
Better? Okay. Yeah. Let me swap these. Is that better?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Although, and that's the problem, is now when I when I go to get out of this, anyway, I can talk to it. So
yeah, do whatever works best for you. It's just looked weird.
Okay. So the first thing, we used to have a script highlight thing at the end, and we realized as far as the flow goes, even though neither Jackie or I think this is really that as important as the other stuff, it's just easier to get this out of the way quickly. And so this example, I'm actually going to get out of this, and I'm going to demonstrate real quickly here the script I'm talking about. And so what I have done is I borrowed heavily, Makestrith had given me some code a while back, and I tweaked the function that he provided me, which I think he even said was from someone else too. But what I can do is I can highlight whatever text I want, and when I hit Windows C, notice the little tooltip that comes up here. So right now, that whatever text I had selected was very quickly sent to this pastscript.org and posted for me. And so it's a great, easy way to share code with people. Like if Jackie and I were working on something, I could very easily highlight some text, and it can be a lot of text. It doesn't matter what it is. I can just hit Windows C, and so see, it's here now. It's on my clipboard, and I can paste it here. But of course, that won't do anything. But I can come back to Chrome here and paste it, and there it is, right? And then in the code, let me see. I think I have it right here. Yeah, let me pop it open real quick, because the one thing I'll point out here is this is the entire thing here. Let me zoom out a little so you can see the full thing. It's not a really big program by all means. In this example here, I actually have it uncommented. And if I was running this one right now, because I actually have it in my main script, it's always running. I didn't run this, but I can launch it. And here what you'll see is it'll run the clipboard. And so after I hit Windows C, this version would automatically open up my default browser and display it, which is, until you get used to it, that's kind of a nice thing to me, of like, I make sure that what I did actually copied, and put on the clipboard, and it got posted correctly. But it still has the URL on your clipboard, and then you can, put it in the email, you can put it in Instant Messenger. It doesn't matter. It's just a quick, easy way. And this is the function right here that uses this one HTTP request and passes through. The only thing you'll want to do here is update this to be your name, or you can leave it blank if you want. So that is our script highlight. It's, like I said, it's a short, easy script. It's easy to use and very convenient when you're trying to collaborate with other people.
Yeah, they're totally nice, these types of scripts. And I think that a lot of people who are actually on the online chat are actually using something similar, because they use HKBin quite a lot.
And this script will be in this deck that I email out. A link to it. It's on my site, which is, let me go back to here. It's the last thing I just posted, I think, yesterday here at theautomator.com. You can get it there, or we'll just put a link to it in the in this deck that we'll send out a bit after the webinar, because we have other resources in this deck. Let me get back into, let me see if I can, well, I'll swap this again.
You should make it upload itself. Yeah, that's probably, you can probably find a modification of it where it does that.
Where it does what? Upload itself?
I just capped the note in that is saying you should make it upload itself.
I don't understand the upload itself.
I'm guessing that you could simply just select all of the script and have it uploaded to.
Oh, I could. Actually, oh, sorry, you're right. I could do this literally. You know what? Hey, let's have some fun. I'm going to highlight it all. Windows C. Now it's there. And now in the chat. There. So theoretically, if I click this, it's there.
Yeah.
Cool. Duh, right? Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes I miss the forest for the trees. But yeah, as you can see, right, it comes in very handy when you're trying to share stuff with a lot of people, or, different ways.
Yeah.
The other great one is if you're doing something that you think you're going to try to email it to somebody and it's not going to go through the email because of an attachment issue or something. It's a workaround for that as well.
It sure is. Yeah.
Okay, close these. And we're back to the deck. All right, so we put together here a few of some of the benefits of both. Now, a couple of these things are really only limited to one or the other, but there was so much overlap that we just kept it to being general benefits to both either simple arrays and associative arrays.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things, and Jackie, you probably won't remember this, but I'd say it was 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I had posted a question to the forum, and I was trying to do a SQL query and search for a pattern matching and looking for specific text within a list. And I had like a million rows of text. And I was trying to search through each row in flag, and I basically had an email address in one column and then a tab and then the text. And I was trying to flag every email address that had on the same row had a certain word, right? And I had written a script that was doing it, but it was taking like minutes to run the search and do it. And I had posted the forum just asking for support, some help to speed it up. And at one point, that was one of those that you had answered and you would put it into an object, and just basically iterated over it and created a key value pair, I think, and just depending on if it was found, it dumped it into a match. And it was just so fast. It dropped it down to like seconds, 10 seconds, instead of minutes. And it was just amazing to me of the speed that objects, even though I think as a variable itself, variables, if you're doing very little, might be, if you're just using it once and just for that thing, it might be faster. Is that probably right, Jackie?
Yeah. Some things are faster, and I remember having some discussions on objects actually using more memory and stuff like that. So there's always an ups and downs to using either one. Yeah.
But I think more often than not, it's don't worry about. I mean, again, with the speed, right? I mean, it overall doesn't matter as far as the amount of RAM and stuff. The stuff we typically do with AutoHotkey, it's not a factor, but they definitely can really speed up things. The code maintenance, and this is where, from seeing stuff from people who know what they're doing, that's not me, but seeing people who write code, and when they know what they're doing with an object, especially like a key value pair or a dictionary, it's amazing to see what they can do with it, and it's so much easier to understand once you get it, to understand what they're doing, to maintain it, to go update it later. You have anything to add to that, Jackie?
No, but yeah, because you are absolutely right. I feel like both 2 and 3 are really, really what objects can bring to the table, compared to having a lot of differently named variables, where you can easily put everything inside the same box, so to speak, but still have it in all well, I couldn't say that, but structure, sure, easy to read, clear what's actually going on if you know the syntax.
And that next one here with the dot notation of the names, I mean, that was one. Wow, once you get used to it, and see, to me, when I was first working with them, getting the data correctly into that key value, especially a multi-level one, right? I had issues with that at first, and I still do if I try every once in a while. But once you get used to it, holy cow, it's so much easier to understand what's going on, and that structure of knowing everything that's here is under these. It just really makes it much easier.
Yeah, it truly does. And I remember us having a lengthy talk at one point about new people who are used to actually reading code, and then to people who has read and used it a little, and so on and so forth. The emphasis on the actual symbols that you see on a line becomes much clearer when you actually get used to reading code. Square brackets versus curly brackets and all of that actually having a meaning, giving you a lot of structure. And I think that the dot notation is the same thing when you're talking about that. Yeah.
And then this last one here, of course, these are just some of the main benefits, but there's some great built-in functionality to arrays. And I have a script here we'll pop open in a second to just demonstrate some of them, depending on your guys' level of how often you use them. But it's pretty helpful that you can easily do things. Let me. Oh, actually, you know what? Sorry, I'm going to jump into that in a second here. Oh, you know what? But let me strengthen. Sorry, not strengthen. Stress. This retrieving, looking up of a key value pair. That is, I think, by far one of the best things of using like a dictionary type thing, where you can very quickly retrieve a value, or to check if something is there and see if you have two different data sets and see if they match, and it's amazing how easy it is to iterate over. You know what? Did I have that in here? Oh, that's just the functionality. I probably should have had in here of the being able to iterate over your elements or your items is also a really nice, convenient thing to be able to do.
Yeah, you could, of course, build different types of phrasing loops or other different functionality yourself, but having it already built in so it looks the same each time you do it, that is, again, a plus because you get more ease of maintenance and more structure.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's for sure.
All right, and then before we start coding here, here are some of the things that, like I said, I've been lately learning more and more. The things that would catch me up, right? So here's a cheat sheet. Like I said, we'll be sending this deck out, but remember that your keys are not case sensitive, right? So both in this example here, where I have associative array, here's the first one and the second one, this would end up with just one key, right? Because this is lowercase ex and uppercase ex, but, and I don't know, is it the second one, Jackie? Do you know which one would end up being in there, or is it the first one in there and it doesn't get updated?
I would say it would be the last one.
Okay. So that's one of just remember, and that has to do with the second one also, I guess, is just that they are unique, and even if it won't warn you and tell you, right? It's you will see you had 3, and then all of a sudden you have 2 or you have 1, but it boils down to is like, oh, the other ones were dupes, but it just I don't know if it actually overwrites it or it just doesn't add to it. It won't tell you that, hey, some of those keys were duplicates, because it's thinking you actually want to do something different with that value when you use it. And then here are these two kind of go hand in hand, right? So associative arrays can have empty spots, right? They don't have to be interval versus oh, sorry, this should supposed to be a simple array. Oh, this is a simple array. This can not. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Because you were still right that an associated array could have empty spots. That was right.
Yes. Yeah. That's why I don't know. I did something wrong.
But again, it wouldn't actually have empty spots because then there just wouldn't be a spot.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
and what really helped me understand, and I keep, I'll see them on posts and everything, but you'll see people talk about simple arrays and associative arrays. And Jackie and I, we hadn't had a chance to discuss this, but once I realized they're really both associative arrays, right? Mm-hmm. A simple array is just when your index is the key.
Yeah.
Right? And that's when that got in my head, it things made a lot more sense of how simple arrays work and how associative arrays work. It's just that a simple array, right, if you have 5 items and they're sequential, it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for the keys, and then they'll have some sort of a value associated to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is just some code behind where one of the developers has actually sat down and put up some rules for how to build the associated array. Mm-hmm. And thereby you get the simple array, because in AutoHotkey everything is an object anyway. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't really matter if you're doing a simple array or an associate array or whatever type of thing you're doing with objects. It's all just an object with different rules applied to it. So yeah.
This is another one that when I first started working with arrays is just to make sure you realize that you needed to declare the object either before or during, when you populate it. But if you don't do that, especially if you try to store something in it before you had declared it, it ends up not being, I don't know, is that right, saved?
Yeah.
Anyway, it's not there. And that one, especially when I was nesting them, and that was where I didn't realize I didn't create the parent one. I had created the lower level one, and then I was trying to put that one inside of a different one, and that one messed me up for a while of realizing like, oh, I need to declare both of them. It just didn't dawn on me that like I need to declare the parent one as well, and then put the other one in it.
Yeah, and that's probably a thing that AutoHotkey normally lets you do, assign something to a variable on the same line, but then you actually here you need to use a little bit more strict coding practice with the objects and the arrays, because here you actually need to at least think about the declaring of the object. Because yeah, you can still do it on the same line, but
Right.
you need to at least do it. Yeah.
Right. And I have an example here, and that other script will open up of some of the, I think there's even more than what I wrote out. But that was part of the thing that also confused me at first, which lends into this next one here of like, both the curly brackets and the square brackets, they really can be used interchangeably. However, I found this post, granted it's old, but Lexicos had mentioned, hey, you know what? He had some logic behind it in this post, but it says for an associative array, it's just a naming convention type thing, right? Use curly braces, and for a simple array, use the brackets.
I actually think that it is making a difference. I can't remember. You might have read it more recently than me. But if you actually assign the curly brackets to a variable, it will store an associative array ready object in the variable. Whereas if you use the square brackets, it would assign a simple array ready object in.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
No,
So,
I didn't read that, but that's something we can test out here in a minute, maybe, huh?
yeah, let's do that.
This is one which we can also demonstrate, but it was one of those that I didn't realize, like, if you just want to iterate over a bunch of things, if you put them into the bracket, either of these, you don't actually even have to save the array. You can just access it as an array and iterate over it.
Mm-hmm.
And another big one, I see it mostly with JSON, but when I do API calls or I'm doing even web scraping, you'll see a lot of the data structured in an array and coming back. And if you can just take that and dump it, automatically access it in AutoHotkey and dump it into another array and you can work with it, it's a big time saver.
Yeah, JSON is, and I can't remember the actual real shorthand, but it is a JavaScript object number, maybe.
Notation, I thought, but
yeah, no. Maybe. But at least it is what it is. JSON is a JavaScript object. So.
And this last one is just one of those things, man, it does take a little bit of getting used to, but they are worth it in the long run. I can't tell you how much I've been starting to use them, and it just simplifies so many things once you do it. My problem is I'm still working on thinking in arrays and building them as an object instead of going down the same path. Like, oh, I need to store this, and I'll create one variable, then I create another variable, then suddenly I realize, like, you know what, I should have structured this, and it's just so much easier to use later on, especially if you're going to dump it into like a list view or something. It's very helpful.
Yeah, I would say I often do on projects that I may not know the actual scale of when I start off. I would probably also just start with the variables. And then at some point I would kind of sit back and say, hey, this is getting out of hand. Maybe I'll convert it into an object or an array of some kind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is funny because you said that, and I'm like, oh, it's one of those things also I'll later realize I'm writing my code, and then I'm like, you know what, I should have written a function for this. But it's one of those that, like, yeah, unless you actually are good about writing out and strategizing of what your plan is, it's hard to realize that before you get going, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, well, let's start digging into some. I think that was my last. Yeah, so here we are. We're going to start going to this. So I have this one file, simple arrays. So here are 4 different methods, all right, all the way down through line 18 to declare simple arrays, right? And so this first line here, I'm declaring a blank array, and then I store 2 values in it. The second one here, I'm just, what is the right way to say this? Is this accessing is that what?
Yeah, it's just a different way of actually doing the dot notification.
Right.
But it is still assigning to the one just like you would with the dot notation. Mm-hmm. The only thing with square brackets, it would allow you to use an actual variable to
thank you.
as the key. So
yeah. All right. So just to point that out, I didn't realize that. So let's say if I had this, I could not do this, right? And obviously I can't do this either. I mean, neither of those.
The dog you could probably do.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yeah, because then it would assign to dog, but it wouldn't assign to puppy.
Okay. Yeah. But down here, would it be with the percents?
No, it was just, it would be like in a function.
Oops.
So that's an expression you have inside the brackets. So.
I did not know that. And then here, this is now I have a regular. I'm losing my mind here. I can't think. What is it? Ellipse? That's not the right term. Parentheses.
Parentheses. Yeah.
Yeah. And then this last one here is with the brackets.
Mm-hmm.
So these are all doing the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and let's see. I'm going to just to try to keep it a little clearer. I'm going to comment those out. And so now we have an array. And what I did here, the show array, hopefully you all have played with functions. So I'm going to show down here. So the show array, this is the function right here. And I'm passing the array to it, or I'm passing something to it. In my case, it's an array. And here I'm going to iterate over it and show what's in it. Right, and then here I'm blanking out because I'm storing it in data, and so it's just going to make it easier for us to show what's actually in the array as we iterate over things. So if I go ahead,
let me just please go back to the. Okay, so you are clearing out the the data variable at the end there.
Yeah.
That is yeah. Okay, that's fine. Just do that. No problem.
Probably it was because I was appending to it. If I ran it again, although it's in a function, I guess it would be okay. When I first did this, it wasn't in a function, but I guess
that is exactly what I was getting at.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter because it's fine that you're clearing.
No, we can. Yeah, that's fine. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and launch this, and now we'll come up here. All right, so this is just showing you right here. This is on line 23. This is what's in there, right? Now here is one way I can insert. I'm going to use the built-in functionality to insert at, and I'm going to insert at the second. Is that I want to say item? Is that right? Index.
Yeah, index.
I'm gonna shove in Chad in between basically Joe and Jackie, right? And so here when I hit OK, that's what happened, right? It shoved inside that array now because I told it do it at the second point, right? And then this next one here, I'm going to say. This is a cool one to me. I can say, I'm accessing that array, delete the first item, but when I do that, I'm going to store that value in the DEL. I'm going to show this, and then I'm going to show you what was deleted. It's kind of like the pop, except for that I can change exactly where I want that to be.
Someone is asking if you can paste the simple array file script you are showing here now so they can play alongside us.
Ooh. Yeah, I'm hesitant to do that just because I'm worried that we would get discombobulated as far as following along and doing it. But that's fine. I think some of this is probably beneath a lot of you, and then those that want to play. I can understand it's so much easier to do something yourself, right? And then when it acts and doesn't act in the way that you had thought it would, it makes it difficult to. Much easier to test on your own. So the link is in there. So here now we were, if I remember right, we were going to delete me apparently because I'm the first one. And so now you'll see there's just Chad and Jackie left, right? So we popped that, and this next message box here under delete is going to be what was, what was actually deleted. And so this, to me, it depends, of course, what you're doing, but that's a great, easy way to, if basically, and I think down here I have pop, show what you're removing, and yet you don't have to do them sequentially. I could have just done the message box right up here, right? I just wanted to break them out to make it easier, a little bit easier to follow.
Yeah, I feel that it's a great way to structure it.
Mm-hmm. Now the next one, now we removed at the first one.
Yeah.
And then now we're going to push Tom. And now Tom got added to the end. And that's what, is that right, Jackie? Pushes, you know what, I'll go back and add, I should have added the...
You're pushing it on the end, like if you were pushing a train of cars or whatever, and you would add one by pushing it on the end. So yeah, push is correct.
So, and then the next one, we're gonna this pop, and by the way, I assume a lot of you guys have done this, but I've used Python and a couple other languages, and the push and pop and remove at, I mean, they're very similar in other languages too. So once you get the hang of it, you can use them in other. Maybe the verbiage might be slightly different, but they're pretty common. So there, I just removed the last item, and now here, because I showed it, and actually I put some text in front of that one. So popper was Tom, right? That one that we just added, it just dropped it.
Yeah. I'm not saying anything to you. It was just chat.
And then now then there's also, you can get the length and the highest I think the max index, is that would that be the highest number if they were all numbers? Is that right? No.
I was just typing.
Okay.
So sorry, you asked us something about some numbers.
Well, max index and length. I was trying to remember the difference between them.
Max index. That is normally the highest indexed number. So if you had 3 in there, but if it was an associated array and you had one of the keys being called 1,000, but there were only 3 values, then max index would be 1,000,
right?
And the length would be 2.
Yeah, that was what I thought was max index had to do with when it's an interval value, it'll look at the number.
Yeah, but it only works for actual digit keys, so to speak. Yep. So it won't actually work for word keys.
Sure, yeah. And this one down here, I'm going to go ahead and now that we've worked through that, I'm going to come back up in here, and I'm going to push this here and return. So now, this is what I mentioned earlier, was here I've put these 3 URLs or domains, I guess, into an array, but I'm not storing it anywhere, right? This is the cool thing, is like I'm just going to iterate over it. So let me save, reload, and when I launch it, and now here's the K. K is going to be the index, and then V will be the actual values of them. And as it goes through, right, it iterates over them.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what I often forget, that like I would go store this somewhere and then access it, but I don't have to go create it and save it and everything, and the second this is done running, this disappears and it doesn't ever take up memory, or at least it's never saved.
No, now that you have that example there, could you try and give it actual keys? Give it the keys 1, 2, 3.
Oops. So like that?
Yeah.
Well, do you want 1, 2, 3, or you want a higher number?
No, 1, 2, 3, just to actually see it error out, because you have the square brackets there.
Oh, thank you. Perfect. So let's follow that up. And you're saying if I change this to curly brackets.
Yeah.
I love learning on the fly. Awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. I did not know that.
But now you could, of course, call the keys whatever you wanted.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
If you now try and remove the key, yeah. See. So now it's no longer a simple array.
Back to, but if I change it, well, we already know because I did that first, right? The brackets. Yes. Yeah, very cool.
So that's the difference from the one and the other.
Very cool. Okay. I'm looking, pushing it off over a cliff onto the side.
Yeah.
Off it. So that was the simple arrays. And now I have another file here of...
I love that. Pushing it over a cliff onto the stack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me pull up simple array play. I'm trying to find the one. It's not this one, is it? No, here I actually cranked this out just to make sure I had a clue what I was talking about. And here was just because I have it open. Let me kill my other script and launch this. I wrote a function that would basically return the sum of these, of whatever you pass to it.
Yeah.
And so it iterates over it, adds them all together. I wasn't sure if I had to declare that in there first. But yeah, so that was that one. But I know I had a...
You probably had another one ready somewhere. Could you
Yeah.
look in your recent files, maybe? Maybe that would help. You would know it best.
Yeah, I'm looking on my other screen here for...
Oh yeah, that's the luxury of having...
This is the nested associative array. I thought I had just an associative array, but that's why I was getting confused.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where also, like I said, the first time I went to do this, I didn't declare this parent one, because here I'm dumping these into it.
Mm-hmm.
But when we run this one now, so it's going to store Joe as the name in the first one, and then the password would be hello, site is the automator, and the second one would be Jackie, password, world, and the site. And then we iterate over the parent one, but we access... Am I saying that right? Because we're accessing those?
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah. So here I just hit my hotkey, and it's iterating over here, and this is I've just this is one message box, but I'm continuing it on each line just because I wanted to line these up so you can kind of see it better. So here's and this is the index one here, and there's the first, and then the second.
Yeah.
Is there anything we want to do with an associative array that, like I said, to me, we could go through and demonstrate how to do a lot of the same things as with the simple array, but they are very similar.
They are, of course, very similar, and I don't think there is much to come after with the simple array, because yeah, you can push and you can pop and you can insert add and stuff like that, but you don't have much more than retrieving and adding.
Oh, right. Yeah. Well, especially because I know I've looked through the documentation, right? There are other things you can do, but I think 99% of the time that's what you're doing, right? You're going to set a value. You might append to it and then maybe pop from it, but more often than not, you're setting values and retrieving them, or just iterating over them is the thing I do most often.
Yeah. I can't actually remember. I know there is a setting for here where the 3 first lines that you have there, that they can actually be omitted. The profile list, object declaring, and the 1 and the 2.
You're saying
If,
that they can be, I don't, I'm not
yeah,
following.
you again, I'm just going by hand here because I actually haven't tested it
Uh-huh.
recently. So, but I seem to remember that if you remove those 3 lines and make a change to line 10, let's try and do that. Just comment them out, yeah. And then on line 10, their profile list. If you go to the one on line 9 now,
Sorry, yeah.
and change that to it must be square brackets.
Around the 1?
Yeah, that's one way of doing it, but I think you can do it for both. So you remove the closing square bracket and put a comma instead, and then give the name quotes and a closing bracket. I can't remember. Try it with the 1 only.
Okay, well, let me finish this and then I will.
Okay.
Because I'll comment these out.
Yeah, you didn't format it correctly. Yeah. And the dot needs to be a comma.
No, it's not running. I mean, there's no message box, which means to me it's not. I think if we did a yeah, that's not an object.
It's
Should it be
me. I'm probably forgetting something.
Okay.
You might need the first line then, but I'm not sure. Yeah. Okay. Maybe if I can't say, but at least that's also one way of doing it. So where it's actually putting it in the 1, and you can make it how deep you want in the same line.
I also could have put this somehow up in here as well, right?
Yeah.
And help me. Let me. Well, whatever. It's another way we could have done that, but yeah, that was.
You could make normal key value pairs up there, and just in the line 4, if you put in a 1 and a comma, and then curly brackets. Not a comma, that would be a colon. Like so. And a comma and a 2 and a colon.
Right. So I'm declaring them in that same one to create, as a placeholder. Right.
Yeah. Now the other part probably won't work.
This part?
Yeah. Try it. Let's see if it works. Can't remember.
No, it did.
Yeah, it did.
So it's taken both. Cool.
Yeah, it's kind of the same way of doing it.
Neat. Love it.
Yeah.
That was, I gotta admit, when I first started playing with these with just simple arrays, there were so many different ways you could do it. Right? That was one thing I gotta say I love about Python is basically Python forces you to almost always have like one way to do something, and there's not all these different types of loops and different things that you can do. And at first it seemed limiting, but at the same time it allowed me to simplify what I learned and use that one way to, that's all I did. Right? It was nice.
Yeah, that's for sure. We just got a couple of questions in the chat. One who asked how I pronounce my last name, and I simply pronounce it Stuk.
But are you sure that's right?
No, no, I'm not.
Sorry.
And that's because it's actually my wife's name, and she has it from her whatever ancestors that actually moved to this country about 100 years ago or so. And at some point, the actual true pronunciation of the word or the name has probably been lost. So I'm just pronouncing it the way that they're doing it, and but again, saying it first in the native language of the name Polish originally, and then making it Danish, and then now while I'm speaking English, actually trying to pronounce it in that.
You're confusing me. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So
That's awesome.
yeah, and then Ed Nelson, I think it was, actually said that's an array of arrays or an object that contains arrays.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's probably
which I think is a great point, because when I first started doing stuff, I would see posts about arrays of arrays, and it sounded very confusing, and that's actually why I wrote this as an example of the similar thing, and I think it's a good example of like how using an array or a multidimensional array can simplify your code. Right, and so what I'm doing here is I opened up an IE window with the forum. This is it goes, and I don't know how much you guys all know about web scraping. We'll at some point get to a webinar on that, but it's going to go connect to that IE window. I'm going to create a blank URL object here, and I'm paying attention closer to what characters I use, just from what Jackie was teaching me, and then I get a list of all the links, and I iterate over them, and I create a key value pair for each of the URL. I'm sorry, actually, index. Initially, when I wrote this, I was using the URLs, but I figured index was a little easier to keep to explain as you see it.
Yeah, you're doing a nested object or nested array there.
Yeah, and that was what I wanted to explain. And I was trying to figure out how to diagram this, but basically there was I had the name of the thing. In this case, it's the href, right? And then the actual URL. And then there was the domain, which and here I have a regular expression down here. Oh, actually, it's not. Sorry, I use split path. And regex. But I parse out the domain. And then there's the inner text. And so I'm grabbing that, but I had the line breaks for making it funny, so I ripped those out. And then the outer HTML, and so I grab that and do kind of the same thing. But as Jackie's saying is, I had this key value pair of here's the this with the value, but I wanted all of that tied to for each URL I had, right? So here's the beautiful part of this thing is notice here that now after I build all that, I do a list view, and I can very simply add in these, and when I do it, and is it running? I don't think it's running. I can pop it open, and here from the forum, it just built this GUI for me with, man, there's just a couple URLs, 213 links on the main page. But it wrote this, but it would be so easy if I decided I wanted to, add something else or get rid of a couple things. The code maintenance-wise of just making tweaks are really easy compared to if I had created variables to store each one of those things. It would be, I think, much harder to follow and to update.
Yeah, and what you have there, Joe, if I'm not mistaken, is that the one creates the blank key for each URL.
Right.
9. If you remove that one.
Yeah.
And you remove the closing and opening brackets in the middle of the other ones, and changed it to comma, you would get the same thing. It's just a matter of how you actually.
And again, can you help me with that? Where would I put that?
On line 10, just after a index. If you remove those two brackets there.
Right here.
Yeah, and make it a comma.
Oh.
Then you don't need to do it on all of them probably, but if you did, it will probably give you the same result. That's just a matter of actually saving a few keystrokes.
Cool. No, that is. Thank you for pointing that out. See, that's the stuff that I'm like, I can't quote unquote see yet when I'm doing stuff. I'm going to study that and understand, because in my head I look at that and like I can't see how that works right now.
No, but that's also, I don't know if it's a special thing, but it's at least it's in the documentation somewhere where Electricos has pointed out how to use that, and it is a shorthand for
Neat.
building nested things. So yeah, but it is nice, and again, as with most other languages, we get a few things here and there from the developer who thinks, hey, that's neat, let's have that. And this is one of those things.
Cool.
Again, so you don't need all of the declaring that you usually are used to, whereas in AutoHotkey you ain't really used to declaring, and that there really lets you build a nested thing right on the same line. So
this, by the way, this is all junk. So sorry, I was just looking at what was down there. That was what I was working on at the beginning. So I think everything after that I can get rid of. Far out. Awesome.
Yeah, it was good.
So we actually we're coming up at the end of the first hour. Unless you have something else, Jackie, to chime in on right now, I'll then why don't I do this? I'll switch back to here, and so yeah, here's a good. So here, like I said, we're going to send this out, and we have here's a link to a video series I did that had quite extensive stuff on using simple arrays and different things you can do with them. And then Jackie has one on Stack Overflow that he had done. And then there's some helpful links on associative arrays. Each of these are just slightly different, but they do have some good dialogue between people asking questions about stuff and someone else helping them understand how to use them. So we'll send this out. And then, like I said, we'll be sending this out to those of you who attended and didn't, but we'll post the videos to our websites, and so you can watch that and have links to the videos.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and stop recording, and then we'll start up our just regular Q&A, just so we can divide up the time.